Good evening. Today is Monday, March 20, 2023, and this is the 142nd episode of New Paradigms. I'm your host, Sargis Sangari. Before we begin our podcast tonight, I do want to take this opportunity to remember the 20th anniversary of Operation Iraqi Freedom, or OIF. On March 19, 2003, the United States, along with coalition forces and allies, primarily from the United Kingdom, initiated a war against Iraq. Just after explosions began to rock Baghdad, the capital city in Iraq, U.S. President George W. Bush announced in a televised address that at this hour, American and also coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations in order to go ahead and disarm Iraq and also to free its people. And finally, to defend the world, as he said, from grave danger. President Bush and his advisors, of course, had built much of their case for the war on the claims that Iraq, under the dictator Saddam Hussein, possessed or was in the process of really building weapons of mass destruction. OIF claimed 4,419 total deaths for the U.S., 13 DoD civilians to be added to those numbers, with 31,994 wounded, with the United States spending an estimated $2 trillion just on the combat expenses themselves. Regardless of your view of the war and what it was able to accomplish or fail to accomplish, I do ask today for our viewers to keep the family members of the Americans who lost their lives in the war in your prayers. And also at the same time, do pray, please, for the soldiers and the civilians who were wounded in Iraq, some of whom suffered multiple amputations and horrendous wounds. Let's also not forget the 270,000 Iraqis who lost their lives, especially the members of my Assyrian community, which was 1.5 million before the war began at the beginning stages of the war, and then is now trickled down to somewhere around maybe possibly 150 Christians remaining. Given the insurgency and also the tribalism that has still not allowed Iraq really to grow to be what the rest of the world had really envisioned for it before the invasion. As a member of the United States military who suffered 7 IED attacks in my first tour in Iraq, along with my Alpha team, I do pray that Iraq one day can finally free itself from the evils that initially created the Republic of Fear under Saddam, and also allowed others to really duplicate that legacy of evil in the region. Before we begin our podcast, and words from our sponsor.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interest, and we never will be. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today to our digital edition at theepochtimes.com and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. Read the difference on all your devices. We'd love to have you on board.
My 3 honored guests today coming to us live from Switzerland are Michelle Cailler, who is the chairwoman of Switzerland's MFR, Mariapia Ambrosetti, who is the candidate for council of the state, and also Nicolas Rimoldi, who is the founder and also the president of a civil rights movement, or is called MASS-VOLL. They are here today in order to discuss Switzerland economic and also political issues and topics, and also the diminishing effects of sovereign states in Europe. My welcome to our guests out of Switzerland. I know that all 3 of you have had a hell of a week, especially today. I do know, Nicholas, you just came from a protest that was taking place, and you did get hit by eggs that were thrown at you, but as they say, they're good for the hair. So I hope that you take it in stride. Michelle and Marie, it's good to have you here. Michelle, I want to start with you because you initially brought the team together here for this discussion. Welcome to the show.
Yes, thank you very much, Sargis, and thank you for invitation.
No, it's my pleasure. Michelle, where are we in Switzerland? What are the issues that you all dealing with? I know you had one of the largest protests just a week ago that has taken place in Switzerland. What are some of the issues that you're trying to push in Switzerland to make sure that the sovereignty of the state is actually kept free?
For the present time, we have a big issue which take place in June, what we call a referendum. We will vote for the third time against the COVID law. COVID law started in 2020 with the health crisis, and it is an emergency law. It means that the government can take any decision about health problems, but health problems is in every part of the society, as well in the economic or in your private life or in the industries. And the government can take measures very binding for the people, which was the case during the 3 last years. And in June, we will have the opportunity to vote against that emergency law and to put back the parliament to control the government, which is not the case anymore.
Nicolas, I know that you all are working together as three different entities representing three different really ethnicities that make up Switzerland. What happened in today's protest, and what is it that you see as an obstacle for the June referendum?
Our government used again, like in COVID times, emergency law on behalf of demands of the US and the British. They told our government what they had to do, and our government did that. They used emergency law. That was unconstitutional, it was illegal, and they used money from the people to save the Credit Suisse. This is money that doesn't belong to the state. This is people's money, and we protest against that. So it isn't a possibility, it isn't acceptable that a government from in the last 3 years and all the years to come uses all time again and again emergency law, breaking the constitution. We don't accept that. So today we went to the headquarters of Credit Suisse here in Zurich in the Paradeplatz and tried to join a protest from the young socialists because we share the same idea. But before we came that, they told all the media, no, the civil rights movement is not allowed there. And we told ourselves, so wait a minute. You in the last 3 years told us that we have to get vaccinated, that we can't live free anymore. And now you try that we don't go to protests anymore for our civil rights, our basic human rights, the right of property. And we told them we are going anyway. You can't send us away. And they came to us on the place and tried to send us away. And we said, no, we stand our ground. We are protesting what the government is doing here. But that result that 30 riot police had to protect us from their violence. They attacked us, throwing eggs at us, did songs. They were shouting at us, Rimoldi, go away. And, well, people who know us know we don't obey. We don't what other people tell us to do. And so, yeah, we stood our ground which resulted to that I still have some eggs in my hair, but we're still alive and we keep on fighting regardless of what the enemies of the Constitution are doing and saying.
Mariapia, I know that you have, of course, taken the major step of running for office and for the April 2nd election, of course. As you have seen what Nicolas has said and also what Michelle said, it seems that the left, far right might be at least seeing something along the same lines. I'm not sure what your perspective is, but if you could tell us what is really happening in Switzerland, is there a possibility for a change in the next election?
Yes. Also, first of all, I come from the Italian part of Switzerland. We are only Italian-speaking people. We are the 8% of Switzerland, and we met each other, Nicolas and Michelle, because of this of the pandemic crisis, and we met on demonstration. We invited Michelle once to speak for the before the second referendum, and so we have the same goals, the three of us. And what we did, I am also the head of the regional friend of Constitution, and Michelle was also the spokeswoman before at the beginning. So we fight together. But now we have in Ticino, in the Italian part, we have founded a new party because it's very important to do that. People know us because we were always demonstrating on the place, but we wanted to do something else, and we then founded this party. It was first founded in the French part of Switzerland in 2021, and we then founded in Ticino as well. So we have a lot to do because we have now the election of these states. Switzerland is like USA, it's a federal state. We have 26 states, and now we have election in my state, in Ticino, the 2nd of April. So we have a lot to do. And I never did political, I never was in a political party, so it is not so easy for us to do all of this, but we try.
No, all you could do is try, right? So, but if I take all of you, I know we have the Italian representation here, French, and also German. What portion, Michelle, is that covering of all of Switzerland, with all of you being united together?
The French part is the second largest part of Switzerland. German part is, I would say, 2/3 of Switzerland, German speaking. Italian part is a bit smaller because it's only one state. And the French part is 6 states. The problem in Switzerland nowadays, we are losing our democracy. I know lots of people, they admire the Swiss democracy, the direct democracy, but we can see that since 3 years, it's disappearing. Why is it disappearing? Why? Because the separation between the powers, legislative powers, the government, and the justice is all mixing together, because the parliament, which is the supreme power of Switzerland, representing the people, has no more control on the government. And our fight is to regain our democracy, the democracy we used to live in, the constitution that we share very much, and that we would like to see our constitution being respected. And it's not the case since 3 years. And with that problem with the Credit Suisse, it's again the same thing, you know. The sovereignty of Switzerland is no more there, because we are taking our orders from USA or from UK, and we can see that the financial world, the world of finance, is giving orders to Switzerland, and it's unbearable. We cannot accept that. That's what Nicolas told you just before, and the three of us, we are fighting to regain that democracy, and we are fighting for our constitution to be respected.
Well, yes. Finance has a lot to do with it. Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, I was just reading today that the former director of the Swiss Health Office admitted in an interview with the Tagesanzeiger newspaper that all the measures taken, lockdown, masks, school closures, and so on, were useless, and that all these measures were dictated by China. It's absurd, isn't it? From China.
It's absurd, but nothing surprises us here in the United States because we deal with the same thing. I do want to go back on the financial piece that you mentioned, because everything's tied to dollars at the end of the day. And I know that, Nicolas, you guys were just a few hours ago demonstrating in front of the Swiss bank here. But if you look at what just came out today, and I wanted this screenshot to be here, is that the credit default swap, which is something I'm going to talk about, are really now liking that UBS bought Credit Suisse, because they're betting their hedges on the failure of UBS. And if that happens, that means Switzerland's economy is going to be absolutely destroyed regardless of who's in power. But there's a video I'm going to initially introduce so our viewers understand what this process is all about.
What is a credit default swap? It's basically a type of insurance against default here that a company can buy. So one party purchases protection from another party against losses from the default of a borrower. Again, it's effectively insurance against a company defaulting, and the price of that insurance for Credit Suisse is now basically blowing out here. Another way to measure that is to look at the different curves, the credit default swap curve, if you will. It's inverted. That means it costs more to protect against an immediate default instead of a default down the line. That's another sign of distress when it comes to Credit Suisse. So there are a lot of different measures of concern and distress that is being felt at the bank here. The chairman of the bank, Axel Lehmann, saying at a conference that government help isn't a topic here, that they're not looking for government assistance.
Because it's understood?
I don't know, or because they don't think they're in that much trouble, or it's unclear. But I do want to kind of piece through how we got to this level, because people in the U.S. don't necessarily follow Credit Suisse that closely, but it is a large bank. It is its assets are more than $550 billion or so compared to Silicon Valley Bank at around $200 billion. So the timeline is long here. It goes back even further than this when you look at some of the issues. But Tidjane Thiam became the CEO, and he was the person who was meant, he was an outsider, he was not Swiss, he was meant to sort of turn things around. And then the company just got hit by various external and internal frauds. He ended up having to be forced to step down in 2020. And then in 2021, there were the failures of a couple of hedge funds and capital firms that were really tied to Credit Suisse, Greensill Capital, Archegos Capital, and that really then accelerated, I guess you could say, some of the issues at Credit Suisse.
So I just want to make sure that folks understand, and I know, Mariapia, you mentioned the Chinese, and when we had one of our banks here fail, it it had a lot of venture capitalists that some of them were basically tied to Chinese Communist Party that are now more likely going to get bailed out by the United States. So for those who don't understand what the CDS is, it exists because, as I've explained it before, if I go buy a house in the United States, I take insurance out on it. It's just my house. I want to make sure I protect it. I have insurance in case something happens, a fire, or the house gets burned down. But I take care of my house. Imagine if somebody goes out and also purchases insurance or premium and pays out premiums on your house, not owning the asset. That means it doesn't belong to them. But they're hedging their bets that your house will burn down because they're going to get a big payout at the end of the day if the house burns down. So these particular programs that are out there do the same thing, but they don't do it with a house. All they're doing it is with a bank, right? So in this case, you have bank hedge funds or any other institution that is out there that wants to spread around what they call the risk against the assets that are out there or validated assets. In this case, the seller now wants to collect free premiums, right? And from the individuals out there that basically say where the markets are going to be, hedging their bets. So these individuals who do not even own the assets for taking on the risk are betting that only a few CDSs might actually default. But in that process, what they're doing, they're really forcing a payout like a casino would. It's all well and good as long as basically everything remains the same and stable, and more money is still made by these institutions or these major capitalist organizations or governments that are out there hedging their bets with the premium bets. And then the payout is made, unfortunately, as you would say, on the CDS if there's a default claim. So that's a jackpot for them. That's why when we put that graphic up, as soon as Credit Suisse got purchased, what happened was the same people came in and actually initially had $60 for those premiums, jacked them up to $160 with the hope that there's going to be a failure in the banking system in order to get their money back, right? So the kicker in this case is that you don't have to own the asset, or the bank in this case, but you can insure it. Unfortunately, as we would say, if you can insure any assets, to including the any country's assets or national debt in this case, and keep in mind, as an example, I would say, for us right now, if people don't understand, the U.S. CDS is right now at $30, and keep in mind what happened to Greece, right? And their debt crisis, which was initially being really exacerbated by high CDS insurance prices, which they're going to try to duplicate in Switzerland, making Greek debt basically literally worthless and impossible to sell to anyone else out there. So the insurance cost was just higher than any possible interest that could have been paid out if it was provided. So the only way you're going to be able to counter against that is really to have a nation come in and be able to be that backstop. It's a ticking time bomb. It is something that organizations or against sovereign states hold in their hand, and they try to use it when the state is weak. Look at where Switzerland is today. Its security depends on others. That's why it has to join maybe treaties that in the past it may not have wanted to, and now its assets are in everybody else's hands.
Yes, the problem is that I'm not an expert of banking, but when a bank falls, such a bank like Credit Suisse, there is an effect, a domino effect, and it can be that many other banks fall, and once because these banks are too big to fail, and the Swiss government already gave. Perhaps I don't remember exactly, but perhaps 10 years ago, much money to UBS, and how it's going to do the same with Credit Suisse, I don't know. But the problem is also for the employers, because we fear that many people will lose their job.
Yeah. Well, you're right, because their accounts are all tied in there. Like here for our retirement and our unions here in the U.S., a lot of them are tied to BlackRock, and BlackRock is really kind of tied to the conglomerates in China, and those Chinese conglomerates will tell it how it needs to think. And if BlackRock, because they have invested in those conglomerates, really its stock starts falling when it doesn't work within the parameters that the Chinese Communist Party and those conglomerates in control have. Just like you just mentioned with the UBS, you have these hedge funds now and other insurances that are going to gang up on any bank that they see as vulnerable and try to bring it down by just basically jacking up the CDS premiums. And they're doing this literally, making it impossible for the bank to do any business and impairing their existing assets. So nothing less than being backdropped basically by a bigger bank or the government itself. In this case, what are they going to do? They're going to pass on the costs on the Swiss taxpayers in order to be able to force those CDS premiums to decline. And unfortunately, I'm not sure if the taxpayers have that ability. Michelle, are the taxpayers able in Switzerland to do anything to support these banks?
It's already the case, in fact, because with that UBS bought Credit Suisse. In fact, it's because the Swiss central bank gave our money because what is in the Swiss, the funds of the Swiss central bank is the money of the Swiss. And it's quite funny because a few weeks ago, usually every year, the Swiss central bank gives back some money to every state of Switzerland. And this year they said, no, we cannot give anything because we have a loss this year. So it's not possible. And just a few weeks after that, they give billions and billions of money, which is our money of the taxpayers, to rescue the Credit Suisse. And they say it's a rescue. In fact, that's the taxpayer rescuing the Credit Suisse. Even if it's UBS buying Credit Suisse, but it's because the state, the Swiss central banks bail out for the Credit Suisse.
And Nicolas, I know you just came from that protest. Doesn't the government of Switzerland understand that really these hedge funds now are smelling the water, blood in the water, as we would say here in the States, knowing that the Swiss government will now likely to take whatever measure necessary to really bail out what you would say, and some folks in the States would say, quote unquote, secret banks, to make sure that they do not fall into the hands of foreign entities. Look, even some of the foreign political issues that we're dealing with, we know that President Xi is today in Russia, meeting with the Russian president. He will travel to Ukraine to meet with President Zelensky. But it was just China recently sitting at the table with Saudi Arabia that has huge interests tied into Credit Suisse that might make the decision not to support Credit Suisse in order to be able to leverage China's ability to really force Switzerland to abide by what it wants. In this case, as it was mentioned by Mariapia, possibly the Chinese government wants and desires in the EU. Does the government of Switzerland, do you think, understand that? Or do you think that people are woken up to understand that this might be a larger geostrategic issue they're dealing with?
No. They're like the captain of the Titanic. They understand nothing. They don't even understand what forces they are dealing with. And that's the core of the problem we are facing today. The biggest threat to our people, to Switzerland, to our democracy, is the threat from the outside. The problem is Switzerland isn't an independent, neutral and sovereign country anymore. We are just doing what others are telling us to do. And that's what we are facing. That's we are protesting and fighting against. We have it here with the bank. We have it in the last 2 years. And now what's coming on the horizon is the biggest threat to our existence. The very fundamentals of Switzerland, that we have a direct democracy, that we, the people, are the boss, not the government, not the people in the cabinets are the rulers. The people is the ruler of Switzerland, and we fight to reinstate what's at the core of our identity. And that's what we are fighting in the next months and years, the WHO pandemic treaty, which will end the sovereignty of every state in the world. And I think that we have uh, discussed intensively, because when that comes, it's over, it's endgame. And I'm very happy that here in Switzerland we have such huge alliances, dozens of organizations from whole of the country working together for defending our democracy, and at the end and at the beginning our basic human rights, because that what's all about, the basic human rights. If you have to ask permission to travel, to enter a restaurant, to go to university, then you're not a free man anymore, you're a slave if you have to ask for your basic human rights. And that's what united all of us here together. And I'm very happy that we are still, after all these years, fighting together for the same goal. And I'm sure we will never rest. We will defend our liberty, whatever it takes.
Well, you can, because look, as we say in the United States, the government is just limited to what it can do. For viewers in Switzerland who may not know, for our Federal Reserve, that really all it could do is to hedge against inflation is by raising possibly the interest rates. The Fed only meets no more than once a week. Usually, in the past, they used to do that, of course, to trade that U.S. dollar. In this case, like if Switzerland wanted money, that would be the time for them to be able to come and purchase dollars. Unfortunately, we had a meeting with the Fed just this past Sunday before the markets opened up, and it seems like they're going to be doing it daily now, which means we may be in a position that I don't think the United States, even the Fed, what it does here, can have any effects on this global inflation. I do want to just have one more capture of a video on Credit Suisse, and then we'll close out the segment and talk about some of the other issues that you all brought up in our discussion. So we'll go to that video.
Well, now to the latest bank crisis. Today, Swiss banking giant UBS agreed to an emergency rescue deal for rival Credit Suisse. The $3 billion deal was brokered by the Swiss government. The move is aimed at ending immediate bankruptcy concerns and stemming panic about a growing global financial crisis.
And this is what you all had talked about. And again, as was mentioned, global financial crisis. The United States is, the Fed is meeting now daily, is because it's possible that there's not too many dollars out there. And frankly, China is holding a lot of those dollars, and Saudi Arabia. So I'm not sure if Saudi Arabia is going to play games or come to the rescue, hopefully, with what the Swiss government wants. And I don't know if the Swiss government is able, through its euro dollar banking capability, like a bank would create those dollars, to be able to generate those dollars that are needed to keep the Swiss economy up and floating. But we'll come back to this discussion if need be, but I do want to go ahead and take a break halfway through for a message from our sponsor, and then come back and talk about all the issues that you're dealing with going forward in May.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interest, and we never will be. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today to our digital edition at theepochtimes.com and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. Read The Difference on all your devices. We'd love to have you on board.
Mariapia, I want to come back to you on some of the issues, especially that you're running for office. Getting into office, what are some of the legislative changes that you can do to reverse some of the decisions that have already been made by the Swiss government, if any?
I don't think we can change too much, but we'll try. Above all, we want truth, neutrality, and we want that human beings are really human beings and not machines. We lost our democracy. Perhaps not only for 3 years ago, but in the last time it was very, very strong what they did to us. Our fundamental rights were really put down. And I'm sorry for my English. I never speak English, so I have some difficulty. But we will try to. We tried also to inform people, because the media are very. They lie. They don't inform, and this was for us also an opportunity, because of the election, to we could write on the paper, and we were published. And usually we sent articles to the press, but they didn't. But now they are obliged to publish us. And so what we can change, I don't know, because we are a small party. We don't know how many members enter to the parliament. We hope 1 or 2, and we in the parliament. In our parliament, there are 90 members. So we will see what we can do. But we are, above all, trying to introduce the homeschooling, who is not permitted in Ticino. There are 8 other states in Switzerland. It is permitted, but I'm also part of the parent association, and this is one of our what we demand to have in the school law, the possibility to have this homeschooling, because during the pandemic we had a lot of problems with children. They had to wear masks, and many parents they didn't agree, of course. This was really a violence for children, and so we said we will our own school, not because the teachers wasn't very. They agreed with the measures because they had fear for the virus or whatever. So if we can have the homeschooling, but it will be a battle because it's not easy.
No, it's always a battle, but you have to fight them, right? So everything you just mentioned, there's similar items that we call the political platforms of a lot of the folks that are running now and possibly in the next election. There is a video that I want to kind of show to reset the room, and it's basically everything that Switzerland has done till now to counter. And then we'll come back. Michelle, I'm going to start with you to get your thoughts as far as where we need to go from here.
It's the new front in Europe's fight against the pandemic. No longer the hesitant, but those dead set against vaccines and COVID-19 restrictions. A fight that's set to get much uglier. Nearly 1 year into the EU's vaccination programme and amid a surge in COVID infections, vaccines are becoming mandatory for entire populations or certain categories, like the elderly or healthcare workers.
Despite months of persuasion, despite intensive media campaigns, despite discussion in various media, we have not succeeded in convincing enough people to get vaccinated.
In November, Austria became the first European country to announce that vaccines would be mandatory for all, starting from February. The far-right Freedom Party immediately called for demonstrations. But it isn't just the far right. Across Europe and for populist parties from all sides of the spectrum, the COVID-19 measures and vaccines have provided a federating new focus that transcends the old left-right divide.
It's a divide about whether you trust the media or not and whether you trust your politicians or not. The new divide is between the mainstream and the periphery. And the periphery is made of all kinds of people.
Sophie Tissier agrees. She's helped organise several of France's COVID demonstrations.
We want to create a citizens' opposition which is beyond electoral considerations and much more like a watchdog that sits outside the world of politics. To be able to tell it, look here, you are no longer protecting our rights.
Researchers at the University of Turin have found a strong correlation between anti-vax and populist sentiment, which means that mainstream governments are now taking on those they've already lost.
The result here would be that those anti-vaxxers would hold even more extreme positions. If the vaccine become mandatory, then the government would need to have some kind of control about it, and this can also undermine institutional trust.
Increasingly aggressive vaccine policies may force many more people into vaccination centres, but they're also likely to push many more forcefully onto the streets. Melissa Bell, CNN, Paris.
Michelle, I want your thoughts on this because it never makes sense to me when a politician says that we haven't been able to convince enough people. I mean, people, if they know something is good for them and healthy, you don't have to convince them. But obviously, it doesn't seem like the vaccine, as much as it was put out there, has been able to really treat or even stop people from getting COVID. Where do you see this fight going in the future?
It was a big suffer for Swiss people because, in Switzerland, we have a particularity that we don't have mandatory vaccines, and for the COVID-19, the vaccine is not mandatory. But they put in place a certificate, a COVID certificate, which is an obligation of vaccination, but a disguised obligation of vaccination. So if you didn't have that certificate, you couldn't go to the restaurant, you couldn't move like you wanted. You have a lot of your basic human rights were not fulfilled anymore. So even if in Switzerland we have that freedom of vaccination, it was a way of putting the vaccine mandatory. But now there is no more COVID certificate. I mean, it is still in the law, but there is no measure for the present time. But at 1 minute or another, it can come back, and that's what we're fighting against. And that's the voting in June, 18th of June. We will vote for or against that COVID certificate. And this is very, very important for Switzerland.
Nicolas,
sorry.
Go ahead, Michelle. Go ahead. No, finish your thoughts. It's okay.
I mean, it's a fight for already 3 years. And what we can see is that most people are very tired of that. You know, they're tired of the measure. That's a thing. But they're also tired of fighting. And we can hear on the street, you know, you have some part of people, I would say, maybe half of the people, they are convinced that vaccine, which is not a vaccine, which is an injection of an experimental product, is not good for them. But you have the other part that is convinced that it's good for them, and they want to have their life, they don't want any change in their life, and they won't fight for that. And I think now the biggest problem in Switzerland, but probably in all the European countries, is that there is no measure anymore. So the people, they don't know why they should fight for. And moreover, the people, especially I think in Switzerland, they are very confident in their government, and they think that the government are taking measures for their well-being, which is not the case. And we are not, we have as well what we saw in the video, that the problem is the mainstream media, because they're not telling the truth. And we constantly have to reinform the people. And, it's very, very difficult because we are very censored.
Nicolas, I have a question on this one for you, because do you see that there's any possibility of building coalitions in the past that you couldn't build? And really, I guess my question for you would be in this case too, is there a political entity there, like as an example, I would use the World Economic Forum or anything else, that maybe the two sides can come together in Switzerland and probably fight against, that might be pushing some of these measures? I think we lost Nicolas there.
Yeah,
he's frozen. Mariapia, I'm going to go to you on this one. These external entities that do have sway in Switzerland, do you see any possibility of the different sides maybe coming together in order to be able to counter, maybe from the left and the right, what the current coalitions that are built in the parliament are trying to force?
I don't know. From the Swiss government, we have no confidence anymore, and I don't think it's coming something good for us. And above all, that as Nicolas said, we are ruled by the. It seems that we are ruled by others. I think WHO, United Nations, and WEF, World Economic Forum, are together to put I don't know, the New World Order, or to be. I think we are going towards a totalitarian state, and the people don't realize yet that it is like this. And we also had many difficulties, because I was on the street to collect signatures for this a third referendum, and it was really difficult because people didn't know that it was another referendum, and they didn't know that the COVID law is prolonged to 2024. And it's not easy because, as Michel said, the mainstream media don't speak about this. And so we have to do all the possible to inform through social media or Telegram and so on. But we don't reach all the people, of course.
Michelle, I want to get your closing thoughts on everything that we have talked about. And I know for our viewers out there, Nicolas told us that he was in a protest and his phone ended up being damaged. It might be the reason he's not there. Hopefully, we could get him back. But Michelle, in closing, if you're talking to the Swiss people and also Americans here, what are some of the key points that you think that we both need to be cognitive of, and what are the things that you think would allow a possible success for individuals like you and Mariapia and Nicolas and your movement?
What I think the big problem are the media. The problem is the media. We would need a strong media to be able to have a contradictory debate, which we don't have. You know, we have only a one thinking rank. People are in the line in the government. Media are in the light. They are propagandists of the government, and you cannot reach people. The biggest problem is that problem. It's the problem that the people, they're not informed. They don't know the truth. They believe what the government tell them. And I think that's the biggest problem that we have. If people could know what really happened, probably they would change their mind. That's why I'm a bit anxious about the results of the voting. Of course, because it's an official vote, the media, they have to listen to our part, you know. They have to listen to us. It's mandatory. But even if it's mandatory, you know, when you go on a TV platform, you know, the journalists, they're always targeting us and questioning, discrediting us by their questions. So it's really difficult. And, you know, for example, it's not fair because they would put one doctor against somebody who doesn't have any scientific knowledge, and they will make a debate. So it's not a debate because you don't have the same forces. And I think really the biggest problem is the media, really.
No, hopefully it can make some changes, but same thing, Mariapia, as you're coming close to the election, and you're of course you're trying to garner those votes. Why is it important for the people in Switzerland to vote for an individual like you? And also, what are some of your thoughts to the United States here as to what it may be able to do to help what's happening in Switzerland?
So I think it's important to vote us because we want the democracy and the fundamental rights that we have lost from our constitution during the pandemic, and we also basically we want democracy, of course, and the free press. The problem is that we have no money or no much money, and the other side have all the money and the power. So we try to do the possible, but we are really close to the people and for neutrality. it's very curious that the same people who were against the measures of the pandemic, so-called pandemic, they are now also they don't believe in the narrative of the Russia-NATO conflict. And so there are many people who are against this economic sanction, because we have lost our neutrality. And neutrality for Swiss people is it's part of our DNA. And so we try to recover our neutrality and also our sovereignty. I also say we have a personal sovereignty and national sovereignty, and we fight for them.
No, look, I wrote a paper in 2015 on a vision that at the time Wang Yi had proposed to the United States as to what China's vision is for US, Europe, and the world, to include Africa. And unfortunately, when he proposed that vision, instead of student rights coming out and countering it, she came out to see how to envision it and what's happening in Europe with the conflict. A lot of it is still to this day tied to those decisions, because I did a follow-up article last year on talking about how the chess pieces are moving in place. Look, sometimes you got to take the tough stance, right? And Iceland, when what happened with their banking is similar to what is happening now in Switzerland with the banking crisis. The people in Iceland said, no, we're not going to take it. We're not paying the tax, and we're going to take a heavy burden. It's okay. And a lot of those bankers ended up in jail. A lot of the corrupt individuals ended up being cleansed out. Now, Iceland's economy didn't recover until now, but at least the people took that risk. I'm not sure if, as you're all mentioning, if the people in Switzerland and the taxpayers are still at a point yet to be able to make that tough call for themselves, because I know eventually, as Switzerland is being pushed to get into NATO, whatever might be the outlying fault of anyone that has finally given an opportunity for Switzerland to be in NATO, those individuals are going to come and say, Switzerland, you have a heavy price to pay us because we worked hard to get you into the position you are today. So if your security is tied to treaties with others and your economy is at the hands of venture capitalists that can basically scuttle you at any given time and collapse your banks, it's very difficult to be not just a neutral country, but a sovereign state that can make decisions on their own. Ladies, it is a pleasure to have you here. If I have not allowed you to say something that you wanted, let me know now. Otherwise, we'll do the close on and hopefully we'll have you back again.
Okay, Sargis, thank you very much for inviting us. And what I would say, in add, what you said just before, and what Mariapia said, neutrality is really very important. And I think that's the point in Switzerland, neutrality. Because, Switzerland took a lot of sanctions against Russia. It's already a problem with the neutrality. Last week, our president was pushed to accept to sell weapons to Ukraine, but he did resist. And the left side of politicals, he was really criticized about his decision. For once, he took a good decision. I think that it would be very difficult for the Swiss people if suddenly the Swiss would be in the NATO. It's not in the DNA of the Swiss. Swiss people are very pacific people. They're very docile. That's the problem, maybe. we are too docile. You were talking about Iceland, but it probably never happen in Switzerland, because Swiss people are very pacific and very docile. And as I told you before, they believe in their government and they believe in their values. For them, it's very, very important. So that's my only hope. It's that Swiss people believe in their values.
Yes, and they wake up finally that what the government does, it's not always the best thing. But we are all, I think all the people of the world now, we are on the same boat, and we must also remember that we are basically in the same human family. So I would say let's stay together and fight together for the freedom. It's very important.
Well said, and wish we could have had Nicolas back here. He would probably echo the same sentiment, but we'll try to get him back again. Hopefully we can get the phone fixed and he doesn't get it broken in another protest out there. But thank you very much for giving the opportunities, ladies, for me to be able to talk to you about this. And, for our viewers out there, this year was a mild winter, but the upcoming winter might be harsher than the previous one. So it's probably going to get worse in 2023, 24 than in the past. And let's hope, as you said, Mariapia, we're in the same human family and we all deal with the same issues, that we can maybe solve our problems together. For our viewers out there, if you like the programming that we had today, please do support United of St. Pio, where we raise money for the 501c3 structure in order to be able to help the Christians of the Near East and adjacent countries, and is not getting any easier for Assyrian Christians in northern Iraq. So for our Assyrian families out there in Switzerland and Sweden, whatever you can do, contribute to help, much appreciated. And a special thanks to Sim Production for giving us an opportunity for really being able to have such incredible guests here to discuss these issues of importance that really link all of us together. I know I myself on Tuesday, I'm going to be presenting in front of the school board that my 10-year-old attends because of a book that was read by the school teacher to them that really doesn't even help them develop their English capabilities or ability to speak. And Mariapia, you speak much better English than some of the students, unfortunately, that we have in our classes here. Much appreciated. Okay, ladies, with that said, we're going to end up with a video from Nicolas and you all of the demonstrations that have taken place last week, and we will have you back again. God bless you, and this is New Paradigms.
Okay, thank you very much.